Hi, welcome back to A Novel Lunch. My name is Pamela Thibodeau. I'm your coach, your writing coach today. And in our last video, we talked with Nona Cross, who does storyboarding as her plotting her to plot her books. I'm sorry about that. I'm a little tongue-tied. So let's just we talked with Nona Cross about the storyboard method of plotting her books. Today, I'd like to welcome Diana Rubino. She is another author friend of mine, and she uses the Snowflake method. Now, I mentioned both of these methods in a previous video called Plotter, Pantster, or Hybrid, where we talked about discovering the type of writer you are. Diana, thank you for joining us.
You're welcome, Pam. Thank you for having me on.
It's so great to see you put a face to your name.
Yeah,
We've been friends. We've been
yeah.
cyber friends for so long, and it's wonderful
No,
that
you're a real person. You're a
yeah.
live person.
It's wonderful that you're willing to share the snowflake method with one of your
I'm happy
previously
to.
published books. So,
Sure,
if
I'm
you
happy.
will, tell us how you discovered the snowflake method and what made you decide to use it.
Okay, well, to be very honest with you, I have no idea how I found it. I have no idea. I have the faintest recollection of where I found this thing. It was a while ago. The first book I used it on was my book about Ona Judge. She was a slave girl who escaped the Washingtons. And I wrote that, I believe it was 20, maybe 8 or 9 years ago. So I've had this a while. And I don't know if I read it in an article, maybe somebody told me about it, but I downloaded the article and I read it and I said, "Oh, this looks interesting," because I'm always looking for different methods to do plotting, and I'll try anything once. So I tried it for my book about Ona Judge, and it turns out it really helped me a lot get to get organized and to expand on the ideas that I had. Like I always draw up an outline first, and
Right.
each each item in the outline is one sentence. So what the snowflake method shows you to do is to expand on each sentence, to
Right.
turn each sentence into a paragraph, and to expand on that and on until you see that you can see the snowflake. Well, you're going to show this on the screen, right? And it expands outward, like it branches out until it looks like an actual snowflake. So if you want to show that on the screen, we can look at that.
Sure.
And
Okay, let me share my screen now. I don't have that particular document open that shows the snowflake, but in the document that you
okay.
sent me, there's a link to go to Randy Ingermanson's website, and it has that article on there.
Oh,
So,
great.
but so we're just going to share the screen with your document on Anna, and you can kind of go over it and show us how that works. Hold on one second.
Okay.
All right. Can you see that? Can you see the
Uh,
screen?
I can see
Okay,
the screen, but
great.
if
Great.
it's the same, if it's the same thing I have here, I would need my reading glasses to see that, so I can just use my printed document here. Yeah, it's the same. It's the exact same thing that I have.
Right.
Okay. So all right, it starts saying story in one sentence, and you can see the one sentence blurb there. Martha Washington's unhappy, confining, duty-filled life as first lady, told by her favorite servant, Ona Judge, who later escaped. Okay, so I took that sentence and I expanded it into a paragraph, which is right there on the screen. So I gave a bit of backstory about when Martha became first lady, and she felt like she was she actually told Oni she felt like a prisoner. Now, can you imagine saying that to a slave? I feel like a
Oh,
prisoner. Can you imagine that?
right.
Jeez.
Right.
Yeah, right?
So,
Yep.
yeah, guys, I see here that it says that Ona Judge also is in a quest for freedom, escapes
Yes.
at the end of George Washington's term, never to return. So
Right.
that's amazing how that paralleled, Martha
Yeah.
Washington's feelings about being first lady
Right.
and
Exactly.
Anna's right,
It does parallel, in different ways, of course. I mean, Martha was hardly a slave, but
right, right,
nobody owned her the way she owned Oni. So,
right.
but from childhood, she always felt that she had the right to be free. She was always anti-slavery, and actually, her father was white, her mother was black, so she was a mulatto. But
Right.
anybody who had any black person who had a child in those days, so whether the father was white or not, she became a slave because her mother was a slave. Her
Right.
father, his
Right.
name was Ona Judge. Her father was a free white person, but she was enslaved at birth. So she always believed that she should be free. And by the time she finally made the steps to escape, to plan her escape, she was probably in her late teens or early 20s,
Oh,
and she
wow.
had the help. Yeah, she had the help of there was George Washington's chef. His name was Hercules, and he was getting ready to escape just around the same time as she was planning it. So he helped her, and he introduced us to her some free blacks in the area. They were in Philadelphia at this time. They weren't at Mount Vernon. Philadelphia was the nation's capital at the time, so that's where they were. At the time, she decided to escape, but she was born at Mount Vernon and she spent her childhood there. But they were in Philadelphia at the time, and she met a network of free blacks that were going to help her uh, get through the Underground Railroad, and she got on a ship and she eventually made her way to New Hampshire. And believe it or not, it's about an hour away from where we live here. We live in Hudson, and she escaped to Portsmouth, New Hampshire on a ship
Wow.
and
Yeah.
spent the rest of her life there. She knew some free blacks there who took her in, and she was a very clever girl. She outwitted her captors. Washington sent a few guys to try to capture her, and she outwitted them, and or she hid from them, and she was always a step
Hmm.
ahead of them the whole time. And then eventually George Washington said, "Oh, all right, forget it. This girl is not. Let's just give her freedom. Just let her be. Let her live the rest of her life." And Martha agreed with her. Martha finally said, "All right, she wants so badly to be free. She deserves to be free. Let's leave her alone." And she spent the rest of her life free. She got married, she had children, and she spent the rest of her life as a free woman. And she was interviewed by a few publications at the time. And the famous quote she said was, "I am free and I plan to remain that way," I believe is what she said.
Wow.
So,
That's
yeah.
wonderful. It sounds like a wonderful story. So in the
Oh, yeah.
snowflake method, you started with your one sentence and then you
Right.
expanded into the paragraph. And so what's the
Right.
next step after you expand into the paragraph?
Do then is all right. So you say your story in one sentence, you expand that into a paragraph, and then you do a summary as told by some of the other characters in the story. So I did a summary as told by Eliza Custis, who was Martha's granddaughter.
Okay.
Did this summary in as if it was told from Eliza's point of view.
Okay.
And then there's another summary as told by Martha. So they want you to do these summaries told by different characters to get a well-rounded feel for the story, and see how the other characters interacted with each other and how they
Right.
contributed to the storyline. Okay.
Okay.
Next
And then
question.
what, after you do your story, your summaries, then
Yeah.
what you go to your
Okay.
questions?
Yeah, there are a few other questions they ask you. How will Martha change by the end? And because there's always a character arc for not for just the main character, there's always a character arc for the secondary characters.
Right.
This is actually Oni's story, but Martha was a very instrumental in the story. So the
Right.
next is how will she change by the end? And you can ask that of the other characters too, and describe their character arcs. And then you go back to the beginning, and you list each event in your outline, and you list the event and the reaction. So each
Okay.
event have a reaction. So each event causes, it's always cause and effect. Every event that takes place in the story
Right.
causes something else to happen. So I have
Okay.
the first event is George got reelected, and her reaction, she was upset, resentful, put out, she was helpless, she had no control over it. The next event is George got very sick, and she blamed herself. This was her reaction. She blamed herself for not looking after him. She was guilty. And the next event is George Washington's duties. Congress is very demanding, and the reaction there is she began stating her mind about politics, and her political leanings came out. And
Mm-hmm.
then the event is Ona runs away, and
Oh,
her
okay.
Martha's reaction. She was very put out. She was confused. Why would she want to leave here? She has it so good here. You know,
Right,
they thought they were, but actually, as an aside, I just have to say this: Washington treated his slaves much better than anybody else did. They
right.
never, they never gave them. They were never stingy with their rations, and so they treated them. He never separated families. That's one thing a lot of slave owners did. They separated families because you've heard
Mm-hmm.
about babies being torn out of their mother's arms. I mean, oh, it was just horrific the way they,
Right,
but
right.
they did that.
And then
So,
there's your
mhm,
ending after the
yeah,
last event.
right. So Martha goes from being a homebody, grandmother, wife, to a more caring, more nurturing. She loves the country more. She appreciates freedom more. So that kind of gave her a perspective on her own life. Ona's
Right,
so that so she tried to see things from other points of view, other people's points of view. So in the end, she tells George she's glad we didn't make her come back. She knows what she went through and feels terribly guilty for enslaving her, and she vows to free all the slaves at her death.
okay. And then you have a summary told by Ona.
Yes, by Ona. Yeah, this is actually her story.
Right,
You just write down the main events that take place during her life. But of course, as you're
right,
writing a story, you expand on these. These are just mainly main events that took place. And as
right.
you expand on that, you put your dialogue in and your secondary scenes and all that.
And then you
So
ask how Ona will change by the
right,
end.
how will she change? Right, what is her character arc? So when the story opens, she's a loyal servant. She goes out of her way to please the Washingtons. She takes pride in her work. She was a very accomplished seamstress, and she has goals. She wants to sell her work like Hercules, the chef. He sold his kitchen scraps. They were allowed to
Mm-hmm.
sell slaves, and then she became aware of what was going on in the country. Of course, the Revolutionary War was going on. So and of course, the colonists were fighting for liberty. So she says, "Well, where's our liberty? You know, where
Right,
these people own us. We don't have any liberty. Why are they getting their liberty? We're not getting ours." But what actually was the number one event? This was the turning point in Oni's decision to escape. She always wanted to escape, but at one point, when Eliza was getting married, Martha took her aside and said, "I think you would make a good wedding gift for Eliza." So Oni thought she meant, oh, I thought maybe she wants me to make a quilt for her or a dress, or she wants me to make a gift. But Martha said she wanted her to be the gift. She was
oh, okay.
she was going to give Oni to her granddaughter Eliza, so she would be Eliza's property.
Right. So that made her realize that
Yes,
she'd never be free.
exactly. That was the turning point. She said, "There's no way Martha is going to turn me over to her," and that was the
Right.
end of it. That's when she made her final decision to escape, and that's when she walked out on them. They were having dinner, the Washingtons. She
Uh-huh.
walked out the door and went to some friends of hers, some free blacks friends' houses
Hmm.
that she knew. And she just strolled right out. They didn't think anything of it because they gave her a lot of leeway. They used to let her go shopping, and what
Hmm.
else? They used to let them go to plays and things. So when she strolled past them at the door, they didn't think twice about it.
Hmm.
So you have her. Those are her goals. She wants to. But when Martha tells her she's going to be given to Eliza, that was it.
Right.
So
And then I see that you went through different events.
yeah, and her mother brought her up to believe that they're slaves and that they'll never be free. They'll always be property,
Right.
slave leased. And she believes that when she's young. But when she gets a bit older and more mature, she looks around, she sees the world, and she says, I can I can do better than being a field slave because she was a very good seamstress. So her talent as a seamstress got her to the big house, the mansion at Mount Vernon. So she was
Right.
allowed to the big house. And then she couldn't read yet. She was not allowed to read. They weren't allowed to read, but Hercules somehow Hercules learned how to read, and he was teaching Oni how to read. And
Mm-hmm.
he read the papers, and that's how she learned about the Revolutionary War and what was going on.
Right.
Were rebelling against the British. And like I mentioned before, that why aren't we sharing this liberty? Why are we still these
Right.
people? And then when George was elected president, she learned a lot more about democracy and what a president actually was meant to do. And then she began thinking about her freedom. And she and Hercules would have these talks about it. And Hercules always told her, "Hey, I'm planning to escape. There's no way I'm going to be sticking around here much longer. So if you want to come with me, you're more than welcome to come with me." And then they went to
Right.
the capital, which was Philadelphia. And Oni didn't want to, her mother was still there at Mount Vernon, and I believe she had a brother there too. She didn't want to leave them, but that was the first step to freedom, was going to Philadelphia. And
Right.
then when Martha said, "I'm giving you to Eliza," she said, "No way, I'm out of here." That was the end of that.
Right.
Right, right. So yeah, that you begin by expanding each sentence into its own paragraph, each
Mm-hmm.
in your outline, and then you expand from that, and you expand on and on and on, and as many times as you believe are necessary. I mean, you can expand to infinity if you want to, but depends on
Right.
how you want the book to be 10,000 pages.
Right.
So
Just enough to get your basic story and to be able to fill in and flesh it out from those points.
that's exactly it. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so what are these list of scenes? Why do you have it as a scene? What is that part of the snowflake method?
Okay, where are we? Are we still in that document there, or
Yeah, you're towards the end.
a list of scenes? Okay, yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's just about how you organize your scenes and how each scene can be expanded, because each scene you write in your outline might be just a bare bones description of each scene.
Mm-hmm.
Snowflake method, you can take either every sentence or every paragraph and expand on that to fully flesh out each scene.
Wow. That's
Basically,
amazing.
yeah, it's basically about starting out bare bones with your one sentence, which describes the entire book, and
Right.
then you write a paragraph about that, and then a paragraph on that, and a paragraph on that, and you just keep going and going and going
Well,
until you.
I think it's great. I had took a class one time at a writers meeting. I'm going to
Mhm.
stop sharing my screen now, unless there's something else you wanted to say about this particular
No, I don't think so.
outline.
No, I'm all right. Go ahead.
Okay. Now, how's that?
I can see it.
I took a class at a writers group one time about the snowflake method, and that's how I found out about it. Because I've always just been a pantser. I just sit down and write. It just comes.
That's
So
amazing.
I started doing the snowflake method, and I got like two or three places, and then I was like, nope, this is too detailed for me because I don't know. And
Mm-hmm.
I tried to do it on one of my books that was already published to try to figure out how to make it work for me.
Mm-hmm.
And it just wasn't going to work for me. So
Mm-hmm.
everybody's got their own way. I know that some people use the snowflake method, they'll flesh it out just a little bit to keep track of an idea. Like you're in the middle of a book and it's like, oh, I have a great idea for another book. So they just do the bare bones of the snowflake method and then put it aside. Then they can go back and flesh it out more and more later. So I do
Right.
know that there's people that do it like that way. It's just a real brief, bare bones outline to get the idea out of your head and on the
Yes.
paper so you can concentrate on the current work in
Right.
progress. So
Are you
I
still a
think,
pan? You still do that? You still
uh,
write?
yes, 100%,
So you
100%.
never outline.
No,
Wow. You
I may have I have a series that I started, and the most I have for them for that series is the characters' names and what their names mean and what their occupation is or whatever within the series. Um, but I really don't have a lot of outline. I've tried writing the synopsis first. I may get a blurb or a tagline, but
Mm-hmm.
usually mine will come to me like for the inheritance, I had this thought. They say life begins at 40, but for Rebecca Sinclair, that's far from the truth. So I'm like, okay, that's all I had. So I just start asking questions and talking and then write the story after that. So it's,
So
I may get a character or a tagline or a
every
title, but pretty
yeah.
much
So
just
every day when you sit down to, you don't know where you're going. You sit down, you don't know where you're going. You don't know how
sometimes I
this is
may,
gonna. You don't know how each session
right,
is gonna end when you sit down.
right. Sometimes I may have just the next scene, but then I have to get them from where I'm at to that scene. So I may get scenes, but it's not usually way in advance. It's like, okay, I'm here and this is going to happen. So I got to get them there. Then once that happens, it's like, okay, now what? And then I'll go on to wherever comes up to me after that. So total pantster. So,
Well, that's amazing. I have another author friend, Ken Farmer. He's about 84 years old, God bless him, and he writes westerns, and he
hmm
writes damn good stuff. He
yeah.
churns them out. Well, I'm one of his beta readers, so I get every chapter, writes it. He's a pantser. He has never outlined in his life. He doesn't even go back and edit what he's written. He gets his beta readers to go over his work
Oh,
and tell him
wow.
what our opinions are. He, he his first drafts are his final drafts. He does not write any more than one draft, and it's
Well,
good stuff too. So
well,
he must
if you,
have it in his mind,
yeah.
but he
Well,
never outlines. And that amazes me how anybody can do that.
yeah, well, if you've been
Oh, but
writing for
one
a
more thing.
long time, if
Well,
you've
he's
been writing,
84. He's been around a while. Yeah, he used to be an
yeah.
actor. He was never a big Hollywood movie star. He was like he did bit parts here and there.
hmm
But one more thing I just want to mention that I have done before. I haven't done it in a while, but a while ago I read an interview with the writers of I Love Lucy.
Oh my goodness.
The name Madeline Pugh and I forgot there were three or four writers. A couple of guys and woman was Madeline Pugh. And now, okay, I Love Lucy was one of the biggest hits of all time. Now, silly as the show was, with all the slapstick and all the pratfalls and
hmm
all the gags and everything, from a writer's standpoint, if you look at I Love Lucy from a writer's standpoint, the writing was brilliant. The
Right.
plots were flawless. They were structured perfectly, and they all came to a perfect conclusion. All After all the craziness that went on throughout the show, they all wrapped it up all neatly, and the show it was brilliant. Those writers were they were the best in the business. So what one of the writers did say was that when they were working on the script, they would start out and say, okay, what do you want to write this episode about? And they would have a couple of ideas of what it was going to be about, just a general idea. Like Lucy gets a loving cup stuck on her head, or whatever.
Right.
If you know I Love Lucy, right? Right? You watched I Love Lucy, right?
Right. Yes.
So what they would do was set up the situation, and then they would write the ending. So they knew how it was going to end, and they said we write the ending and then justify our way into the ending.
hmm
And I thought, wow, that sounds like a great idea.
Yeah,
Write
that
the
is a
ending.
great way if
So
you can.
yeah. So I did
Yeah.
that for a couple of books. I wrote the ending before I got to maybe the first maybe a quarter or a third of it. I wrote the ending and justified my way into it, and I found out
Wow.
that really worked. It
That
really
works
did.
too. Well, wonderful.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing that with us, and thank you for sharing your snowflake with us. Um, so I'm going to talk to the listeners now a little bit. Diana has given me permission to give this document to you to download so that you can use it as an example for your own book. Please understand that all this is copyrighted material, but it will be on the website. The link to that will be in the show notes. I will also have a link to Diana's website in the show notes. And then in the document, you'll have links to reach her and to find her books. Thank you for joining us. I hope this episode was beneficial. If you'd like to work with me one-on-one with your writing project, my email is in the show notes. If you enjoy this content, please like and subscribe to the channel and share it with others who may benefit from it. And if you'd like to support this channel, that information, a link to that is in the show notes as well. Hope you have a great day, and until next time, write happy.